Three, two, one. And we are live. All right, amazing.
We
Great
are.
to meet you. I'm excited to get to know about you, your story, and your book that you just mentioned a little bit before. So, first, I like to ask, even before you introduce yourself, we can get into that, but I like to ask just what is it like to be you as a human? What is it like to have your experience as a human?
Oh wow, that's that's a deep question. As I told you, I'm really old. So, so what are we talking about here? Very interesting. I would say very interesting. And
Mm,
I've had very, very varied experiences. I was
okay.
born in Iraq. My family came here as political refugees in the 70s. I've traveled a lot. I've had been to different schools. I've done different things in my life, and probably I spent a long time in doing what you could call spiritual work in terms of a lot of Tai Chi, meditation, doing energy healing, and working with people, and it's all been very enriching. And
Mm,
maybe one of the most enriching parts of that has been working with clients when they entrust you with their perspectives, their experiences, their problems. It enriches all of us. I hope I've helped them, but they've also helped me to enrich my knowledge, my experience of life through sharing with me. So
yeah.
that's been very, very privileged to have that, and I'm very grateful for it. And thank you for having me here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to dig into some parts of your story. Of course, we probably can't cover all of it in like a 50-minute conversation, right? But I'm always really excited to meet people, and especially coaches and mental health workers, or even just like in general, our artists and entrepreneurs, because they always have such interesting stories. And I really like that you mentioned that working with clients like enriches hopefully their life, but also like helps you and gives you a different perspective and and all of this. So why, how long ago did you become a coach and started working with people? Do you work with people for still privately, like one on one?
I do, but I've scaled my work from when the lockdown started in April 22,
Okay.
sorry, 2020. I went one to one to one to many,
Mm-hmm.
but I do still do private work as well, one
Okay.
to one as well. But
So
you know,
how long ago did you start doing private like one on one sessions?
I started, well, I was working as a mathematician in the petroleum industry, and then I moved into
Mm,
investment banking.
okay.
So we're going to get into the story a little bit, but I started working, doing the work that I'm doing now, very, very slowly from 93. I started training
Okay.
as a healer and therapist. And in the 90s, we didn't really have coaching as a thing.
Mm,
NLP started coming in,
right.
CBT started coming in, and I did all these courses as well. I'm not a qualified NLP practitioner or CBT, but I did do the trainings,
Mm-hmm.
and I incorporated them into the therapy and healing work that I did. And because of my background, I attracted a lot of professional people.
Mm,
And so the work developed into um, specializing for people at work and really doing leadership and holistic well-being. That's and it became
how,
coaching later.
yeah, makes sense. Okay, so it's been like more than 20 years. Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
more than 20.
oh,
Yes, let's say
almost.
let's say about 20 years doing it properly. Yes.
Okay, so about 20 years. What would you say have been, because it's hard to probably say one. What were the, say, three biggest like enriching insights or biggest kind of like mind openers from just directly working with clients and hearing their like personal experience, what they normally don't share with the world.
Um, do you know, sometimes it's really the simple things that hurt us most, and it's when we
Mm,
don't really understand that this is what's going on. I've had clients who've been senior leaders, and they've 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 literally slapped laptops down in meetings and stormed out. And they develop a reputation for anger management. But when you
Mm.
start working with them, you start realizing actually is that they, I mean, it's never really right to do that, but it's it comes from feeling their values are not in alignment with what they're being told to do, that they're not being authentic to themselves, or they're subconsciously perceiving that their bosses are, or consciously perceiving their bosses are asking them to do something that is unethical. And so,
Mm.
so you really learn never to judge a book by its cover. It's easy to have our judgments, and I'm very big about saying hear people out, and then make your own minds up.
Yeah.
That was always a big takeaway for me, and as a therapist and a coach, and it's important.
Yeah. And I think this is something that everybody should take away, not just mental health professionals, let's say, or not just therapists and coaches, but everybody should replace judgments with curiosity, right? And and really just be like, okay, like what's actually going on instead of just judging it away. That's a great insight. That's a great insight.
Thank you. It also makes us feel much better about ourselves. The more of our own
Mm,
wisdom that we use to overcome that, we
mm,
feel better, we feel more aligned, and it's a win-win for everyone, I think.
yeah, totally. Okay, so you mentioned that you were a mathematician before.
Mm. I studied maths, yeah.
I don't think I've. So okay, so this is the funny thing because in school we everybody learns math, and basically everybody says like, how am I ever gonna use math in my in my real life? So you're like actually were one of the rare cases that actually used math in your professional life.
Yes.
Okay,
Well,
that's
there are a lot of
fascinating.
mathematician in engineering, in the
Okay,
petroleum industry where I worked, and then also in
okay,
banking. Now you have quants, who are mathematicians, and they work on all the structured products. So
okay,
it's not a totally pointless exercise.
okay. It yeah,
Yeah.
but when you're going through it, it definitely seems pointless. Like, and I because okay, I'm still in the young world. I'm 24. I deal with a lot of say students or people who just entered the workforce, like just graduated school, and they're like, okay, what now? Um, so I'm very much in this world. You were from okay. So how was it being a mathematician, and how did you transition into coaching eventually from that?
Um, I did love maths at school, but then I was a little bit reluctant at university. It has to be honest. I
Mm,
have to say that. There were a lot of paradoxes that everything that we tried to do was a paradox, which I didn't like. I never really, even then, um, believed that there is such a thing as paradox. I believe that we have a lot of a very wide database of knowledge, right?
mm,
Um, that we can access. I believe, I think I've always seen this kind of energy field that connects everybody and has a very high intelligence. Um, Paradoxes will point us to where our knowledge needs to grow and expand. This is an area that needs to be developed. So I always had that feeling, even when I was 18, 19 studying it. So um, I kind of fell out with maths, kind of moving on. But I did qualify and graduate, and working in the petroleum industry was interesting. But then they wanted me to go out on an oil rig and work in the North Sea, and it was going to be me, who's a 22-year-old girl, quite naive, coming out of university, and 300 men in the middle of the sea. I
whoa,
was thinking, this is not going to work for me. So I left. I went and I managed to get a job in project finance in a bank. So that kind of
okay,
started me off on my banking career, and then later I moved into investment banking.
wow,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So but I have met women since then who did do, excuse me, who did do that. They did go on an oil rig and they managed fine, But
okay,
at that time, I didn't read. It was not something I wanted to take on. So
yeah, wow.
I did
That
not.
sounds like
Yeah.
really scary. I would personally, if I had the chance, I would probably do it, but like that there's a big difference. There there's a big difference being just one of the guys versus being one young girl and 300 or however many. And yeah, just like overall in the North Sea on an oil rig, just not just the people, but the environment itself is already like high pressure, high stress. Mm,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah. And I think at that age I just wanted to go out and experience the world. I did not want to be stuck in an oil rig, you know.
Right.
So
That
that was a
also
color
makes
for me.
sense. Why?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I would maybe I would go just for a few months, maximum, like 3 months, just
But
to
well,
have
I
the
wish I had you
experience, you
there
know?
to advise me. It does sound like a plan.
Yeah. So it's just like, oh yeah, 3 months. I spent 3 months or 6 months, whatever, on an oil rig. And that would be maybe like a good story. So then you got into banking.
I
How
agree.
was that? How was like working as in finance and all of that?
Well, I experienced a lot of the problems that I then coached about later and helped my
Mm,
clients with, obviously. But for me, I actually loved it. I never had this feeling that I was doing something pointless.
okay.
My friends always made fun of us bankers because we were pointless, you know, to most people. And I actually always saw a purpose in banking, that
Mm,
I was helping companies to have the liquidity to be able to provide us with goods and services that gives us the first world standard of living. They took care of their employees, who then took care of their families, and I just kind of thought we were helping the world to be a better place to live in. And so I never really felt that my banking career was pointless or I had no purpose in it. I always
mm,
saw that purpose. Um, so, but that was at that time, and then I started experiencing kind of what was really the precursor for spiritual awakening, and becoming more and more interested in spirituality and meditation. And I started um, kind of delving more and more into that. Um, and eventually I left to do the
mm.
work I'm doing now.
Okay. So this is what makes me really curious. You mentioned spiritual awakening and kind of like building up to it. So what was the building up to it process, and then what would you mark as like, okay, this moment? Do you have that like that? Like this moment was my spiritual awakening, and then since then everything was different, or was it kind of just a gradual transition overall?
It was a gradual build up and then a moment, and then that
Okay.
continued for many years actually. And it was, there are many ways to describe it, but I'm going to just say this in terms of purpose. My life was like that, you know, kind of coming from Iraq and then
Mm,
um, studying like maths and then moving into banking and then being in lots of different countries. And then at some point, everything looked like a straight line when I look back at my life path.
mm,
It no longer looked really strange and jumping all over the place, but it was every experience I had was really relevant to my life purpose, and to what I needed to do in my life. So that all the experiences, whether they're really awful and I experienced some very horrible things, and whether they're really, really good ones, they all go to enlarge our database of knowledge. And and this is something that really came to me very strongly.
mm,
If we want to experience more love, and most of us do, we want to give more love, we want to experience more love, we need to be able to clear the pipes, you know. It's like a house that has furred up pipes, you know, and you need to make the pipes bigger to allow more flow. And when you do that, you're also allowing the less pleasant things. You know, when we are in a human body, we are conditioned to like pleasure and dislike pain. That's normal, right? So but in order to have more love, more sentience, more experience, you can't choose one and not the other. You've got to take the whole package. And I started seeing that more clearly. It gave me a lot more acceptance around a lot of things that happened in my life. It made me more accepting of other people, and it gives you a very different perspective when you start seeing things from
mm,
that viewpoint, from a wider viewpoint.
mm. Okay. And you said it was kind of a slow build up and then a moment. was it kind of just spontaneous, or what did it? How did it kind of come about? What was the cause? Do you know, or do you have theories? Or
Well, I think yes. I mean, I think it's because I was really, really, you know, I went. I was looking for a teacher for a long time. I did go to because I live in central London. We're very blessed here. We have all the different representations, the disciplines, religions, gurus, and and schools here, really. So I went to a lot over 2 years, and I was looking for
mm,
a teacher. And most of the ones that I came across were really, really decent. They worked in a very good way, but they didn't vibe for me.
mm,
And then one day I came home, sat down, and I was actually a bit upset. I was like, why am I not finding a teacher? You know? And and yeah, and then I thought, you know, I believe we are all really, really well guided, all of us. And that guidance is it. So I kind of thought, well, if I believe that about everybody else, then why am I not guided as well? So I'm guided as well. You know, let's just say that. So it's up to me to tune into that frequency. So I sat down and I started thinking, how do I tune into that frequency? And when I changed that from basically taking personal responsibility for it, I started seeing a lot more and
mm,
getting a lot more and being supported a lot more. And it changed it changed the course of my life, really.
mm. Okay. So it did kind
Yeah.
of come back to the saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So you had to kind of get ready, you said, right? You had to take the responsibility and be like, okay, and accept that, oh, if everybody else is guided, then maybe I am too. And then,
Mm.
so what did you actually resonate with? You said you tried different schools, right? And different religions and different teachers. Is there
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
specific, does it have a name, or is it your own kind of thing? Is it just spirituality,
Yes.
or is it more Buddhism, or some religion, or
Okay. So not long after I finished my maths degree, I came across a book called the I Ching.
okay.
It's one of the oldest books on earth. It was believed to be one of the oldest books. It's about 5,000 years old. And it's the precursor to Taoism. And
Okay.
I just fell in love with it. I just kept reading it over and over again. I couldn't really understand it, but I thought that's me, not it. I could feel that it had a lot of wisdom to offer, but I just kind
Right.
of realized I'm not there. So I just kept reading it. And one of the lines there was, to lead truly is to serve. And that just like set everything alight in me. I loved that so much. I loved it. And I just kept reading it over and over again. And when when that time came, I remember just opening the I Ching and my eyes fell on the practice of Chinese yoga. I was like, Chinese yoga? What's Chinese yoga? You know, can't it just be a bit more clear about what? And then it clicked, Tai Chi. And then just then,
Ah,
a booklet came through my letterbox
wow.
about Tai Chi. I was
Wow.
like, well, okay, I forgive you. That makes it more clear. So I went to the Tai Chi class, and I just fell in love with the whole environment. The teacher, he was called Master Chu. He's called Master Chu, and I hope he's not watching. But at the time, I remember thinking he looks a bit like Yoda. You know, it's just like, and the whole energy was light. You know, it was light. And I remember
Mm,
when I was talking to people in the school, the energy was so clear that I kind of knew people's names and where they lived even before they told me. And I wouldn't call myself psychic, you know, but in that, I think it was just the energy was so clear.
mm,
And I realized that was from people, his energy, but all his senior students who've been practicing there year after year after year. And I remember thinking, watching the senior students do the long form with him. And I think my mouth was probably open. And I was like, whatever it is they've got, I want to do this. I don't care how long it takes. It was so aligned, so calm, so elevated. and beautiful. And I just thought, whatever it is, I want to do this. So I started doing the form, and I very quickly was doing like 2 hours every morning religiously. I
Wow.
wouldn't even travel unless I could do that. And
Wow.
that's when I also decided I really needed to meditate, and I got fed up not being able to find a teacher. And I thought, okay, I'll develop my own meditation, and which is not, and and then also I was reading everything I could get my hands on about spirituality, about different spiritual disciplines, about different religions, about um, my mother was a psychologist, so I was kind of reading all the books on psychology as well and philosophy, and I loved anything to do with that. So I did that for a long time, for about 8 years,
Wow.
as well as, and then I started also, I was guided to healing, and when I started healing, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit because I think this is really relevant. By the third, at first I didn't really want to go. I was guided, and I was like, no, I'm a mathematician, I don't do that. And then I thought, but that's really, I'm very open-minded. Of course, I'm going to go. So eventually, I did go, and by the third session, I came out. I thought, wow, we use 5 to 7% of our brain, the cognitive processes of our brain and of our mind. And this was some of the rest. I came out thinking, this is some of the rest. And I knew it was not the subconscious mind. And this was back in 93 when I first went to my first healing class. And I then went and researched it. And there is a thing called the superconscious mind, which has been written about since the 1820s by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, who was a philosopher and a poet who was at Cambridge University. And we now call it the higher mind, or a lot of coaches call it your genius. So that is the superconscious mind. And I just kind of started doing more and more and more of that. And um, I just kind of fell in love with healing and um, the amazing gifts that it brings to us, not just in terms of physical healing, but in terms of helping you to align more deeply to your inner self, to being more aware, to being more connected with other people, to developing your empathy. And I'm just going to come back to my book for a minute. It's this book. It's called Beyond Potential. And it's written for people at work. But in the book, I work with 4 modalities: psychology and coaching. There's a lot in there. Meditation, because that's such an important, now everybody tells you, there's so much research that nobody doubts that meditation is very, very good for you. That research by Harvard actually shows you meditating just 10 minutes twice a day, morning and evening, for 8 weeks is enough to significantly grow your gray matter. So we know about the benefits now of meditation. The third pillar is energy works, and the fourth pillar is your hero's quest. What is your North Star? What are the dreams that are in your heart that you need to look at? Because if you don't look at them, you're going to be really frustrated, and you're just going to keep wanting more. So that is the fourth pillar. But the third pillar, I will talk a little bit more about why I decided to include it in the book. It's because the practice of energy healing, even if you're just working with yourself, and I give you the bare bones of what it is and how to use it, it gives you 3 things. One is, it's really hard to heal other people or to be a healer if you don't have empathy. And today in the workplace, we know that employers will employ people on their EQ, their emotional intelligence, over
Wow.
their IQ. Yeah, because they find employees with high EQ tend to be calm under pressure. They tend to be able to resolve conflicts very quickly and effectively, and they're a lot more empathetic with their colleagues and with their clients. So that's one benefit. I'm hearing a lot of feedback. Are you?
Oh, I'm not, but I can just mute the microphone if that works. That helps. Oh,
Yeah, that's helped. Yeah.
that is my camera.
You've disappeared. Oh, there we go. I've got you back. So that's one benefit. The second benefit is connecting to your higher mind, which coaches call your genius. And in chapter 4, I actually show you how to do that. And the other kind of really benefit for the workplace is it helps you to connect more to your intuition. And if you look at the most successful people on the planet, whether it's Jeff Bezos, Oprah Winfrey, Richard Branson, whether even Einstein, all of them credited their success not to the data and the research, but to their intuition.
Mm,
And often, if you think about it, they were trailblazers who are cutting into a new area. The metrics are always going to tell you, no, that's not a good place to go because it doesn't exist, right? So they actually carved a niche, that whole one, much more than a niche. Look at what they've accomplished through following their intuition. So it's really important to be able to connect more deeply to your intuition, not so that you just do everything your intuition tells you, but that you use it as um, another factor when you come to your decision making consciously. So that's really why I decided to keep the energy work section in the book. That I think it's a really important thing to know. And the book comes with a workbook. I give you guided meditations and exercises on how to develop lots, all the different things in the book. So that's the
okay.
book plug over.
Yeah. No, I would love to come back to the book and learn maybe more about like why you even decided to write a book and how did it come about, and also how, because I'm in a process of writing a book and I've published a
Okay.
couple, and I'm in an anthology as well with other authors, and we're working on some other books as well with some other people, and
Okay. Okay.
I have my
Amazing.
I have a book coming myself, right? So just the process of writing a book, I
Oh
would love to find
wow!
out more about.
I'd love to hear about that and your
I would love
story.
to.
We've been talking about me non-stop.
Okay, yeah, we can get that. I have one question only, I guess, that I was thinking about, and that is, what is your practice now, right? Because you told me about what your practice was before and how you kind of tried different things, and then you finally discovered Tai Chi, and you were like, and that was a great moment, by the way, that I would love to highlight, where you said, I don't care how long it takes, that's what I want, and I'm gonna do like whatever and however long it takes, right? That's a great moment to highlight, I think. And I wish more people had that sometimes. We're like, okay, that's exactly what I want, and I will do whatever it takes and however long it takes to achieve that and to get that. Because I think that's a very powerful driver to achieve whatever you want. So, but what is your practice now? Do you still do Tai Chi every day for 2 hours, or do you meditate every
No,
day?
no.
Is it 10 minutes per day, or like how do you practice this now?
So apart from meditation, there's something called conscious questioning, and I do that a lot. So
Mm.
whenever I come to a kind of point of a paradox that we talked about earlier, it doesn't work, then I sit and explore it. If I get triggered, I go and explore that. I do meditate a lot as well, but I meditate. I'm more pressed for time these days. I don't really have. I mean, I do have a business that does leadership and holistic well-being. Um, Workshops and trainings for to work with businesses. So I have less time, but I tend to go for long walks. I multitask, but I also meditate when I go for walks, and I do meditate on the treadmill as well. So I work out, and would like to say this. Make sure that the speed is set to constant. Otherwise, you will go flying off if you're meditating. I have done that. So um, so I do that, and if I feel a bit stuck and like I've been working too hard, I will take time and just really just sit and meditate, and I do that as well. So I unfortunately no, I my master left, and I looked for new masters, and none of them really. I didn't feel comfortable with them. I loved being with them, but now I will say that I've always loved the healing aspect as well. And when I first learned healing, I started off working in the format of the National Federation of Spiritual Healers. And now they're known as the Healing Trust. And I am a trustee with the Healing Trust. And it is one of the oldest and largest professional healing organizations in the world. and we're doing a lot of research as well. We're working now with universities on on the research for healers. So it's and that I do love working in that area as well.
Ama- okay. Amazing. Amazing.
I can't hear you.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
thank
I
you.
had to unmute.
Yeah,
I had to unmute. Okay, meditating on the treadmill. I like that. I run a lot. I don't like
excellent.
so much the treadmills because I like nature and I like changing scenery, you know. So I actually go out for runs. But I've been running for over a decade and definitely not planning to stop anytime soon. Okay, so because you asked about a little bit about me, so I think I'll start with I would say I have like three major missions in life that I can like, kind of articulate very well, um, decently well. One is
Okay.
to help as many people as I can overcome social anxiety and build relationships so we eliminate social anxiety and loneliness from the world. Number two is to help people overcome imposter syndrome and start sharing their gifts, whether that's art or some passion projects or entrepreneurship. And number three is to help, let's say, the world or obviously people create a healthier relationship with technology. Or, in other words, create a healthy relationship between humanity and technology. Because that's,
Okay.
obviously that's where we're going in a big way. And I go about it in different ways, especially in the different missions or the different levels. I think more so specific. Social anxiety is my kind of first level because that's where my life started. That's where my story started with severe social anxiety, being bullied in school, being the nerd, being the shy kid, not being able to speak up in front of the class, not being able to connect with people, not really having not having really having like deep, meaningful friendships in the beginning, and being like chronically lonely even when I was around people. And I started working on that when I was 13. So I literally Googled how to be happy on my phone. And
Wow.
that's how I got introduced into the world of self improvement and personal development. And then later on, spirituality and whatnot, and practical psychology. It's like, let's say 11 years ago now. And I really I became kind of obsessed. And so I would like spend hours after school just learning about psychology and personal development and that's when I started running, started waking up at 5 a.m., going for a run, changing my habits, changing my beliefs. And with those practices I was able to basically completely turn my life around, overcame my was no longer suicidal, overcame my social anxiety, um, became really happy in life, and I'm actually proud of myself and relatively fulfilled. I was able to speak to people on buses or like just joining random groups of people in a park and stuff like that, which was unthinkable before. Like I couldn't even say hello basically to classmates almost. Right? In the class it was, at least we knew each other, so it was a little bit easier, but talking to strangers was completely unthinkable. I always kind of felt like I want to be able to do it, but I just couldn't, right? And then it became normal for me, like speaking to people on a bus or speaking to, yeah, just meeting people, and it was really awesome. The experience was just like finding out about other people's experience and making friends with all kinds of different people. Kind of fell in love with it. And by the time I was 19, I started thinking like, my life is so different internally mostly, because from the outside you couldn't tell much, but internally my like it was night and day difference. And so I started thinking about, I want to help other people and maybe I want to become a life coach or something like that, right? And now imagine a 19-year-old thinking about becoming a life coach in, say, Eastern Europe or Central to Eastern Europe, where mental health was still like kind of a taboo. Like that's why I didn't go to therapy, because my parents were like, that doesn't exist, just get over it, like whatever. That just and and then I'm like, I'm gonna be something like a life coach. And obviously all the people, everybody said you're absolutely crazy. First of all, you have no life experience. There's nothing you can help people with. You're just a naive kid. You don't know what the world is about. You've never accomplished anything, and so nobody would ever listen to your life advice, let alone pay you for life advice as doing this as a business. No chance, never gonna work, right? And I kind of listened for a bit, and I think it took me about a year to kind of process it and overcome that imposter syndrome, and started doing it anyways, and started helping people just kind of focused on just social anxiety, social confidence, building social skills, not really just like I will help you completely in life, you know. And later on, as I was doing that, this theme of using technology and looking at life as a video game, and I might add that in school I studied electronics, automation, and robotics. I was always very good at math, so I can relate to that. I didn't really see the point of it, to be honest, right? That's why I brought it up. But like I was really good at it. I didn't particularly enjoy it, but like I have a pretty logical brain, so I was like never really good at this is the funny part. Never good at doing additions or like multiplications in my head. Like I always mess that up. Sometimes that's why I would get like B's instead of only A's, because I would know all the theory, I would know how to do everything, I would
I,
understand everything.
I am going to stop you right there, and I'm going to tell you something. The best mathematicians suck at arithmetic.
There you
You're in good
go.
company, don't worry.
There
There
you
we go.
go, right? So,
Yeah,
but yeah, so everybody, like, I would always mess up some super simple, like 7 plus 8. I would write 14 instead of
yeah.
15. And so that's why I would get, sometimes, not all the time, but all the, like, actual logic and all of that, like, I really got that, the patterns and that. Um, and so by studying robotics and automation and technology and electronics and physics, a lot of physics in the beginning especially, I really understood the world from that perspective. And then I added the psychology and all the personal development and especially practical psychology. And so it started becoming this like different philosophy. And I also did a lot of research about like Buddhism and Christianity and Islam and a lot of different religions and different spiritual teachings. And none of them really connected with me. So I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to kind of create my own. And I started creating this idea of robo-humanism, which is really what my own book is going to be about. And explaining that through the lens of like playing video games and like looking at life as a game, but also like with some technology terms that my generation should understand a lot through. Like I use analogies like phones and computers and stuff like that, and video games a lot. And so it kind of goes together as this philosophy in a way that ties everything together. And a big part of that is to help people create a healthier relationship with technology and themselves and humanity. In very more specific, where the stage of where it is now is mostly using social media for personal growth instead of letting social media use you, right? And again, it comes from my story, and like you said, once you had your kind of spiritual awakening in a way, everything made sense, and it like kind of becomes a straight line. So for me, it's kind of similar. Like it seems like there's so many different things, right? Like business, and then there's social anxiety, and then there's computers, and then there's like physics, and then there's, but it all kind of starts to make sense to me, not to other people. So communicating that is the tricky
I
part
love
then.
it. I love everything you said. And first of
Thank you.
all, amazing story and well done you on overcoming all of these things in such a positive way. I really love hearing about that. And I actually identify with a lot of your story as well. But
Ah, that's awesome.
I actually, yeah, and I love what you're talking about with technology because um, a couple of weeks ago, I think, or 2, 3 weeks ago, I put on LinkedIn and I circulated it to my mailing list. Um, can AI help us? Can it guide us, help us to have a higher moral standing? Because we as humans have so many biases. We have our points of view and perspectives, whereas potentially AI can have a much more um, objective viewpoint and help us to arrive at more just decisions, more ethical, more, to help us elevate our humanity. And this is something I never hear discussed. And I actually said to them, would anybody like to hear a debate on that, for instance? and maybe we can do one together, so because I actually I hear everything you're saying, because I think social media, yes, it has a lot of negative side effects, and we've seen a rise in suicides, for instance, a rise in
Yeah,
bullying.
yeah,
We've seen a rise in eating disorders and body
yeah,
dysmorphia, specifically with young men,
yeah,
and that's really a worrying trend. And yes, I'm sure we can attribute a lot of that to social media,
yeah,
but we've also seen a more level playing field in terms of knowledge, in terms of how it's expanded, how knowledge is disseminated, how even news is being put out, and it's no longer under as much of a monopoly as it used to be in the days before social media.
yeah,
So it's so there's a lot that technology and social media has brought to us. And I'm kind of excited about AI and the potential it has for us to make it what we need it to be,
yeah,
which is to help us become, to elevate our understanding, to elevate our social justice, to elevate our humanity. And I think if we put into it what we really need to get out of it, which is that, I'm like 1,000% with you there. I think it's a very exciting area for our development.
yeah.
If I'm understanding you correctly, I feel this
Yes.
is what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And AI is going to be a big part of it. I mean, AI has been a big part of it for a very long time. Recently, it seems like, oh, AI became a big thing recently, or like a couple of years ago, let's say, with ChatGPT and whatever. But like AI has been around for much longer, just more so in the background where people didn't really care for it so much, and it was more like really just like in the background systems. But then now it's becoming more kind of in the public eye, right? But so yeah, AI is a big part of it, but also especially now because like I don't have, and I'm learning, right, and I'm studying, and I'm definitely gonna have like AI experts and technology experts to talk to on my show and on my podcast, which is in a big way for me just to learn as well and connect with people and learn about different perspectives, and there's a big reason why I do this. But also for me, like what I've experienced personally with, and what I see is that social media itself or can either cause or contribute in a big way, like you said, to mental health problems, and especially like loneliness and social anxiety, because it's this little bit of a different paradox of like, yeah, like it makes you more connected and like easy, you can actually easily connect with people on social media. However, most people make it makes most people feel more isolated and more distant, right, instead of actual having deeper connections. And I think this comes from kind of my experience, my story, where I was still very young, and before that, I really didn't use much of social media. Facebook was around, and and these kinds of things, right? Of course, MySpace and Snapchat was a big thing back then. I never really used any of those until I Googled how to be happy, and I decided that I want to overcome my social anxiety, and I started using it very consciously. Of okay, I'm going to go online to be social, to make friends, and to practice my social skills and build relationships. Like that was the main reason why I got on social media in the very first place. Because my parents were very like say old school, so they didn't encourage to, and we also just couldn't afford phones and stuff like that. But that's besides the point. Um, in the earlier stages, so they really didn't encourage social media or smartphones or something like that before.
Mm, mm, mm,
And my main goal of going on it was to be social, and so that's how I've learned, and it was a big part of my journey of how I overcame social anxiety and how I started building some basic social skills of like being able to ask questions and being able to send even a stranger a message, because that felt like, oh, I don't want to bother people, I don't want to be annoying, right? And that started translating into my real life a little bit later on as well, when I started talking to strangers on buses, for example. Right? It was different situation, but similar feelings or similar thoughts that I experienced. And but I've practiced that, right? And being able to ask questions and what to ask and things like that, how to carry a conversation. I started by chatting, And then I went into voice messages, and then I went into video messages, then I went into phone calls, then I went into video calls, and then I went into chatting with people actually in real life. So it's these levels how I use technology and social media to overcome my social
That's
anxiety.
See, that's a very positive way of using it.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, a lot of people start becoming dependent on the likes, on people responding back to them, and the validation that they're getting rather than
yeah,
forming a connection. So
yeah,
you're focusing on forming a connection,
yes,
and that's actually a very beautiful thing to do. But for a lot of people, it becomes about becoming dependent on validation, and when they don't get it, and they're unvalidated, say, let's say, and or they're being attacked, even worse, it all becomes very internalized, and
yeah,
that's the less healthy aspect of it. But I love how you used it, because that really showcases the positive way of using it. Well
yeah.
done you for
Thank
working
you,
that out. I mean, some
thank you,
amazing wisdom that you have.
thank you. Yeah, and so yeah,
Yeah,
that's what's going to be a big part of my bigger book. Also
yeah,
some smaller, just kind of bite-sized, let's say, ebook guides, right? These like little bite-sized pieces of how to use social media in a more healthy way, and how to be
yeah.
social on social media instead of being antisocial and isolated, and these little things that I want to put out there as like a bigger part of the mission of creating a healthy relationship between humanity and technology. Yeah.
Excellent. Well done you.
Well, thank
Excellent.
you. Thank you. What an
Yeah,
amazing conversation this has been. And thank you for
very
sharing your
very
story.
lovely. No,
So,
you're self-publishing, I take it, or
yes, for now.
okay? If you need help, ask me. I went through it. So that's
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Right. Well, it's great. It's always great to have connections like this and being able to stay in touch and then reach out to ask questions, or um, even if I'm gonna talk to somebody who's like, oh, you should really talk to Lubna about this specific thing, or whatever. There's synergies. I love connecting people like with one another.
thank
It's
you.
one of the great things, great joys of my life as well. Of going from severe
Oh,
social
that's lovely.
anxiety, not being able to speak to people, to now being like a social glue in a way sometimes. It's very fun for me. And so
Well, it's yeah. So
go.
go on.
You were gonna say
No, I was just going to say it's been a pleasure talking with you. I mean,
yes.
and hearing your story. Thank you for sharing it.
Yeah, so for the last few minutes, who should get your book? Like, who's the main person who should get your book?
Well, I mean, I work with leaders and their teams, so that is really the main focus is leaders and their teams. And there's a lot in there for leaders who want to learn to mentor and coach their teams to
Hmm.
perform better. And the
Okay.
work that I do really is helping the whole team to be aligned, to be able to work together, to pull together in the same direction, to be motivated and really heading towards true north as one. And that strengthens the whole team. And instead of just, it helps them to not only achieve their goals and milestones, but it will help them to get growth for the whole organization. It allows them to make more of an impact and to have that sustainable success that isn't just like one off thing. They're going to be working really together very strongly. And if you think about it, of a larger organization that's made up of a lot of these teams, the impact that all of them working more cohesively together would have. And we know, for instance, in the UK, this doesn't happen very often. Productivity is around 37%, and
Hmm.
in the US is very, very low. And in the US it's around 50%. It's better, but not much better. So there's a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah.
So this book is written for that, for leaders and their teams, but it's also written from the perspective of personal responsibility, what each one of us can do to help ourselves to be more aligned, to find our values, purpose, to look for that overall purpose in what we're doing, and to make more of our skills, our knowledge, and our experiences to help us not just go to work every day, but to really thrive and to look forward to it. That's so important. It's such a large part of our day. and we can't, leave bits and pieces of us at home. We can bring everything and make a better environment. And I always see each one of us being like a drop of water. We can
Mm,
create harmonious ripples that helps us see the clear road ahead and create a better environment for the people around us, or very discordant waves, which makes it very hard for everybody around us and for ourselves to be productive because we're so focused on damage limitation. So the
mm,
book is really aimed at anyone in the workplace who wants to make more of their skills, their knowledge, and their abilities. And we do work holistically, as I said. We work body, heart, mind, and spirit. And it's it is really for anyone in the organization. It's written from that perspective.
amazing. Okay.
Thank you. Thank
Would
you.
you have any closing words or closing statements to leave us with?
Closing words. Well, I would say keep doing what you're doing. I love it. I love
Thank
what you're
you.
doing. I think it's really amazing. And to your listeners, I would say if you ever feel that out of balance, misaligned, come back to your core, find that
Mm,
inner connection, and that will always open up the way forward for you. Look for the bigger picture because we can get so lost in problems that we forget to look for the bigger picture. Always reset, take time for yourself, make that space, physically even, make that space for yourself and try and see the bigger picture. Just you always that light will always come through for you.
love that. Find your center.
Yeah.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much for doing this. Have an amazing rest of the day. And
Thank you, Andras. Thank
bye,
you.
everybody.